There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of mediation, The Court of Human Relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation, helped to make it a creative force in American life. A.L. Alexander.
We are all familiar with an expression of our time, have a heart. In the words, have a heart, we appeal to a person who has the upper hand, perhaps in some critical situation, to be kindly, compassionate, forgiving, in the broadest sense to love another and to have some consideration. Now, in this instance, as in so many others, we have two people, a complainant and a respondent, each of whom says to the other, in effect, have a heart, because of confusion as to just where this absence of heart or indulgence or consideration is. The issue is presented to a board comprising three fine mediators, wise and perceptive observers of the passing scene. Author Virginia Peterson, famed clergyman and veteran mediator Dr. L. Wendell Fifield, eminent member of the bench and the bar, Honorable William A. Wachenfeld. Now here is the young man who is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, members of the board, do you feel that it's reasonable for two people to involve themselves in a situation without taking into serious consideration all of the problems? I'm 24 years old, a freelance artist. I still attend school and have a moderate income. I met this young girl a few months ago, and we found that we had a great deal in common. As a result of that, we became quite friendly, and in time became very much attached to each other.
Now, did you consider marrying her?
Yes, I did. Very much so.
Yes, and then what developed?
Shortly thereafter, I proposed, and I noticed that she was troubled and concerned about something. And after a great deal of prodding on my part, she revealed to me that she was previously married and the mother of 3 children, which are now in her custody.
How long ago was this particular significant conversation?
About 3 weeks ago.
And what is the situation now?
Well, I love this girl. I know she cares for me, but I just feel that at this time I cannot undertake the responsibility of a wife and 3 children. And I've told her this repeatedly.
Well, then, if you've told her this repeatedly, and certainly you have a right to make that decision, why are you here?
Well, she seems to feel that if we love each other, that this will solve all of our problems, that love will conquer all. I feel that there's more to it than that.
What does she think you're being?
She thinks I'm being unduly cautious. And as I've told her before, I just can't undertake the responsibility of a wife and 3 children.
Does she make any suggestions? You told me that she considers you unreasonable.
She does, and she offers all kinds of possible solutions as to how to solve this problem. And as I say, I do love her, and I want to marry her. But I feel that it can't be solved in the way that she presents it.
And do you feel that you're in a somewhat awkward position because of closeness, and you feel a certain tenderness, and you want to have this settled?
As I said, I love this girl, and I would like to have it settled. If I'm wrong, I'd like to know that too, and why.
Well, suppose we hear the other side of the story.
I'm very glad that we are mediating, because I feel that what we need more than anything is a very clear understanding of the situation. This man has told me that he loves me, with all that that means. Well, if the responsibility of a family is too great, then what about me? It's a responsibility that I have faced and will continue to face. After all, what is love if it's not the sharing of responsibilities together?
Well, apparently this young man feels that he isn't ready to assume responsibility for a wife and 3 children.
Well, I simply feel that if he's going to be so terribly concerned about accepting responsibility, if he's going to worry about this thing and that all the time, well, then his fear and his caution must outweigh his love for me. After all, what am I supposed to do with these children? They're here. They're a part of me. And it seems quite apparent to me that if he's not able to accept the children, well, then he isn't really accepting me either.
Well, what about the practical considerations?
Well, the practical consideration is that with or without another marriage, I do have to work. So that if we were both employed, plus the money that I do receive for the support of the children, what problem is there?
Now, is there anything about this young man and his attitude toward you that disturbs you or makes you wonder?
Well, I'm quite deeply concerned with the fact that he doesn't seem even a little bit interested in even so much as exposing himself to my children. They're children who are just waiting for somebody to come along and love them. And I can't understand this attitude at all.
You mean he doesn't even want to come in contact with them?
Not at all. And yet he says that he loves me.
Well, we understood him to say that in the beginning, certainly, he was completely unaware even of the existence of these children.
In the beginning, I felt under no obligation whatsoever, nor do I now, to tell anyone, right off the bat, all the details of my personal and private situation. When our relationship became serious, and it did very rapidly, I told him without any hesitation or any delay. Surely he knows we really haven't known each other for a very long time, and it didn't take him long to propose, and it was something of a surprise to me. When it came, I told him.
Well, now, what have you to say?
Well, I've tried to solve this thing in a rational way rather than in a emotional way, and she seems to feel that all things can be solved by a means of fairy tale simplicity, and this would be great if it were true, but it isn't. I've reached a point in my life now where I'm trying to become established, and I just feel that I would be hampered and burdened with the responsibility of a wife and 3 children. It's not just the financial responsibility, but apparently these children need parental care and guidance, and I am in no position now to assume that responsibility.
Now, as we understand it, this doesn't mean that you're interested in breaking up this relationship.
No, it doesn't. I just feel that this is the sort of thing which can be solved only by time.
And in the meantime, you want to continue this relationship in the same close way that it's existed for some months past.
Yes, I certainly do.
I don't understand this. I love this man. I'm willing to marry him, to share my life and my children with him. He seems to feel that this is unreasonable. Well, I feel that it's unreasonable to be asked to wait an indefinite length of time. He talks about 3 or 4 years, maybe, when he'll make up his mind to get married.
It isn't that I want to make up my mind about getting married. I've already made that decision. I do want to marry you. But I just feel that at this time, I am in no position to marry you, particularly bearing in mind that you have 3 children, which you did not tell me about when I first met you. And who is going to take care of these 3 children while I'm working and while you're working?
Oh, I don't see what more of a problem that is than it is now.
Well, who's
And if we
taking
were
care of
together,
them
it would be
now?
less of a problem.
Who's taking care of them now?
When I work, they are cared for by babysitters.
Is
Who
that
else?
enough?
No, of course it's not enough, but I have no choice.
I'm saying again, if you will just wait a few years, as you know, I'm in the field of art. It's a tough field. It's the type of thing where a break can come in 6 months or in 3 years or in 4 years, but not beyond that point.
There is also the possibility that no break will ever come, in which case I waste 4 or 5 very good years.
What do you mean waste?
Well, I can't go on indefinitely without
But you love me,
having
don't
any
you?
idea of ever getting married. Oh, yes, I do. But I expect you to assume the responsibility that goes with love.
Judge Wachenfeld, it's apparent that this young woman is of the opinion that it's unreasonable for the man to expect to continue this relationship on the basis that it's continued in the past, unless he's willing to marry her?
Well, this problem at least has the facts fairly and honestly presented. There's no equivocation as to their order of their occurrence. Man meets a girl, falls in love with her, and proposes to her, and then he's rather startled to find that there's more than he knew about. She has been married before, and there are 3 children, and he wants time to reflect. And he asks her if, under the circumstances, he cannot take it under consideration for at least a reasonable period of time, and whether he should have that opportunity of considering it is not for this board to decide, but for the young lady to decide. This is a fine couple, and they are contemplating matrimony. Matrimony, at its best, always has difficulties. This young man says, well, perhaps I've bitten off more than I can chew. And if he has that approach to it before marriage might convince him that that is an actual fact. I think that both these people, especially the girl who is involved, should give it more tender consideration than she does. I think the fact that this man is willing to come here and to consider it and to mediate it, and when he announces publicly that he's infatuated with her, he loves her, I think that you both should take more time and sit down and evaluate this whole picture and see what you can do about it. But don't let this inharmonious intrusion come in where it upsets everybody. This is a serious matter. It's a serious matter for the girl because it gives her greater insight to the boy, and the boy certainly has new factors to take into thought until he finally concludes whether he wants to consummate this marriage or not. This is not an easy problem. You are still both young. You have a great future before you. Don't miss the opportunity. What you decide is probably your own personal equation, but give it time, give it thought, talk it out. That's the way you can get at the truth of these things and whether or not you can live in harmony forever, because once you're married for a long, long time.
Well, Judge Walkenfeld, these people came here, did they not, to talk it out? And you can understand that under circumstances of some dignity and in the presence of this board, there is more in the way of decision possible than if they were to talk it out in the privacy of some other place where it might end, as these things so often do, in a quarrel. And that's the purpose, as I understood it, for this mediation. Now, I think that we can reduce an otherwise complicated matter to its simple, essential elements. Judge Walkenfeld, we direct this question to the man. Now, it's essential that you answer this question directly and frankly because it goes to the heart of this whole situation. When you ask for time, you're not asking for a day, a week, a month, a year. Actually, how long will it take you before you'll feel that you're pretty well established in a position to marry a woman with 3 children?
It's the kind of thing, as I was saying before, Mr. Alexander, which is up in the air at the moment because being in the field that I am in the field of art, I feel that it would take at least 3 or 4 years before I can reach a point where I can say to this young lady, let's get married.
And possibly longer.
But let me say that if it takes longer than that, then that I'll still marry her at any rate.
Then you what?
I will still marry her.
In other words, you're telling this board, or telling her in this board's presence, that what you want her to do is wait for you a minimum of 3 or 4 years.
Yes, I want her to give me a chance, at least 3 or 4 years.
Does that place any light on it, Judge Walkenfeld? And what have you to say about that as the respondent?
Well, I feel that, as I said, that's pretty unreasonable, especially since there is no inclination whatsoever to get to know my children or anything else. I don't want to rush into anything either. I have children at stake, and I would not marry anyone who I was not quite sure was going to care about them.
But what would you consider a reasonable time?
Oh, even as much as a year. And then maybe I might decide against it. as well as you. But
you feel that
I
an
would not be
indeterminate...
expected to go on and carry on a relationship as close as ours is,
Well,
indefinitely.
why don't we then approach it? If you're as close together to solving your problem as that, then why don't you, with the assistance that you received here, why doesn't the boy reconsider it, and at least you hold yourself in abeyance for, as you have suggested, a period of a year. He knows now what the facts are. It'll give him an opportunity to acclimate himself to the situation, and by that time he can come to a definite answer, and I think perhaps that's your solution.
Well, Judge Walkenfeld, it's apparent that these young people have made a deep impression on you, and I know that you're compassionate, and I think it would be very disturbing to you or to anyone to see them break up. But you're faced with a very realistic situation, and I ask you very directly, sir, do you think that it's fair to this whole situation to put pressure on it by suggesting to this man that maybe he could marry her in a year? He says that he has certain plans that are going to take 3 or 4 years. She says she has 3 little children and a great responsibility and that she can't wait that long. Now the issue is clear, and I don't think that any attempt to soften it is going to be of service to these people.
I'm not attempting to soften it. I'm
May I say
attempting to
something
meet
here,
the
Mr.
I'm attempting to meet the issue just as it has been presented. The boy says he needs 3 or 4 years. That's a long time for youth or maturity. The girl says she thinks 1 year is not unreasonable. So why don't we adopt her terms and at least take a period of study and reconsideration and reevaluation for a period of 1 year.
And what happens?
Perhaps by the end of that 1 year, the boy can make up his mind. And if he makes up his mind that he wants to go through with this matrimonial suggestion, then our problem is solved. And if on the contrary, he says, no, I haven't quite made up my mind, perhaps the girl will come to a definite conclusion which will solve the whole problem.
Dr. Fifield?
I'm afraid I'd have to differ with that position, because I don't think the problem is the matter of his career at all. I think the basic problem, as I listen to these people, is the fact that his love isn't deep enough to make all of the necessary adjustments in order to marry this girl. A year isn't going to make any difference as far as that's concerned. I'd like to speak a word on behalf of the 3 little children that aren't here. It seems to me that they need consideration very, very definitely. And I just am a little disturbed at the attitude of the young man in wanting to push that whole matter off on this young woman for this period of time. If he loves her enough and can't make the grade in his present profession, there are plenty of things that can be done that he could support a wife and 3 children. Now that's what love is to me.
Well, Doctor, are you saying then, specifically and without any question, either that he makes up his mind to marry her within a few months or a year, or else he remove himself from the picture?
I wouldn't go for a year. I'd go for 3 months because I think it's an inner problem. I don't think it has anything to do with his profession.
Why do you say that, may I ask you?
Simply because I think that the kind of love that makes a marriage necessary is the kind of love that will adjust itself to all of the factors that are involved. Now, I'm a minister, and in the wedding ceremony, you would have to say...
For better or for worse?
For better, for worse. But also, you would have to say, and the bride, with all my worldly goods, I thee endow. And in this instance, these worldly goods are not material, they're children. And those children will become part of your responsibility. And no matter how successful you are in your job, if you don't have the father feeling toward those children, I'd be opposed to this marriage.
Well, Dr. Fifield, it's apparent, of course, that the reason that he's so cautious is because the children will become his responsibility, and he's well aware of it. Now, I think that this is becoming complicated, and these people came here to simplify it and not complicate it. Now,
May I say something, Mr. Alexander, just for a moment, please? I've prepared for the field that I'm in now all my life, and I'm still going to school, as I said before. Now, if I give up what I'm doing now and start out in some other field, how long will it be before I reach a point in that particular field where I am able to take care of these 3 children financially. It's a practical thing, but it has to be answered.
Not really the problem.
They have to be clothed, they have to be fed.
What is the issue?
The issue is that as was just said, that love means a great deal.
Love won't feed the children, I'm sorry.
No, and do you think that it's a better solution for you to just not take any part in it? In other words, it's easier for me to feed the children than it is for us both together to feed the children. I don't feel that I am presenting a burden on any man that I marry by giving him my children. They're pretty wonderful little people, and I feel that I am giving him something extra.
I don't doubt that, but let us say that we did get married, and I wanted a family immediately. I've always wanted one. Then what?
Well, but you don't want one immediately.
No, a family of my own.
Well, then you don't love me enough to marry me. That's
Well, I think
If I
that-
had
all I
your
wanna
3
know,
children and a
just
family of
love
my
me or
own,
leave
how would
me.
I be able to support them also?
Well, I think the issue is very clear. This man is not in a position to marry the girl at this time, and he has no assurance that he'll be in a position to marry her in a year, and he thinks he may be able to marry her in 3 or 4 years, and that doesn't satisfy the girl, Miss Peterson. Now, that's clear.
Well, no one seems to take into consideration the young man's psychology about children that are not his. I don't think one can expect, no matter how much he loves the young woman, for him to feel automatically paternal when even fathers themselves don't immediately feel paternal very often to their children, that he should suddenly see that he's not getting just a woman he loves but a whole family he didn't make is quite a challenge.
Well,
It
Ms.
doesn't
Peterson,
seem to me
no
that
one
he's
is
failing
taking
in
the
love.
position here that he must feel like a father and that he must take these children unto his breast and be like a male parent
Well, yes,
who's
because
responsible for them.
Dr. Fifield was saying that if he really loved her enough, he would feel a father love for those children.
Well, whether that love is there or not, the point is that this young woman has 3 children and she has a problem that's very serious facing her, and she wants to marry.
Well,
Now,
she
he
has to
says
go
that-
on and take care of them anyway, doesn't she? And if she wants him, she could wait a little while and see how, but I think he should see the children.
Well-
But this woman has said that she is willing to give this problem study for a period of a year. And Dr. Fifield says, don't do it. Limit it to 3 months.
I didn't hear anyone say that she'd give it study for a year. She feels that she's willing to be engaged.
Call it what you like. I call it study. She may call it consideration. You may give it another name. But at any rate, she did say that she thought that the period should not be extended beyond a year. And Dr. Fifield says that it should not be extended beyond 3 months. I don't think that this board should have the audacity to intrude and limit the girl's own conclusions as to the serious consideration that she wants to give.
Well,
She
her own-
apparently has a great regard for this boy, and she's hoping it materializes, I think. And I think it will.
Well, what happens
But
if
you
at the
can't-
end of
you
the
can't
year,
force it.
Judge Wachenfeld, what happens at the end of the year if he doesn't want or can't marry her? What
At
happens
the
then?
end of the year, which is the time that this girl herself has selected, sir, I didn't select it. She selected it, and I adopted it. I say that at the end of the year, if the boy at that time or before that time can successfully marry her and she is sure that there is all the love and the confidence that is required for a successful marriage, that then our problem is solved.
Well, we address the respondent. You don't want to wait a year, do you? That's the outside time, isn't it?
That's the outside time, on top of which what's important on that is that he is not willing to accept that.
Well, to sum up,
No, wait a second, just one moment. As I said before, bearing in mind the field that I am in, I feel that it would take 3 or 4 years before I am in a position to marry you and support you and take care of 3 children and start a family of my own. There is a possibility, though, that within a year I'll be in that position, but I doubt it very much.
well, I have a very specific question to put to each of the mediators, and I think in justice to these people it should be answered, because this kind of wrangling is what could go on in their lives for the next year or 5 years. Ms. Peterson, in view of the situation as you've heard it, can you see any imminent marriage here?
No, I do not.
Judge Fifield?
I don't see any imminent or prospective.
And I might as well be consistent and say Dr. Wachenfeld.
Dr. Wachenfeld dissents.
Well,
Dr. Wachenfeld says as to whether or not there should be that marriage should be determined by these young people and not by us.
well, you've had an example of the way they're determining it. It was because of their helplessness and bewilderment that they came to this board. And the majority of this board, I'm sure, is concerned, obviously, with all of the values. This is one of those cases that is reduced to the question, certainly, of the young man's own estimate of his capacity on the basis of the facts as the board has heard them. Now, certainly, no real obligation, Judge, exists from any practical viewpoint on his part. On the other hand, here is a young woman with a real obligation to her children and a very heavy responsibility. And in view of the young man's situation, since no marriage is or can be in the offing, and that is very clear, and by offing I mean in the near future, certainly, according to the majority of this board, he cannot reasonably expect this young woman to maintain a relationship or wait an indeterminate time. That's the feeling of the majority of this board. As we express our thanks to our mediators and bring our proceedings to a close, it occurs to us that we search the world for what we call happiness, seek it in 1,000 ways. Now, in this regard, somebody said, speaking of happiness, that there are 3 basic essentials. Indeed, with these, who can be unhappy? 1, work to do that one likes. 2, someone to love. And 3, something to hope for.